in our lives. Have you ever been in such a situation? You're already full, but you can't help eating more when you see snacks. You have too many clothes in your closet, but you still buy them when you see discounts. It's very late at night. You have to get up early to go to work tomorrow, but you can't stop watching short videos. These behaviors make us feel sorry for ourselves, but we don't know what to do with them. This is a state where you've obviously overdosed, but you can't help it. This is a state where there is no external force forcing you, and you can stop as long as you want, but you just can't control it. This state is called addiction. In today's video, we'll look into the mechanisms behind addictive behavior and how to deal with it. Why do we become addicted? Because each of us has a scarce brain. In other words, our brains are constantly sending out signals of scarcity. It makes us believe that what we have is not enough. We are deeply bound by this sense of scarcity. Even if we actually have too much, we still can't stop chasing. So why do we have a scarcity brain? How can we get rid of it? Let's get into the book we're going to share today, Scarcity Brain. It's divided into two parts: the reasons why we have a scarcity brain, and what the mechanism of this scarcity brain is. Then we'll see how we can get rid of our scarcity brain and even surpass it. Logically, modern society is so rich in material and information. It seems that our brain shouldn't be constantly sending us signals like, "I'm scarce, I'm not enough." But the feeling of scarcity is a primitive instinct left over from human evolution. Consider that our ancestors lived in a world where resources were scarce. They had to travel long distances to find food. It's said that they walked at least 30 miles a day, and their food source was very unstable. They didn't know which tree had fruit, where a wild animal might come out. Even if they find food, they don't know if there will be food tomorrow. Under such circumstances, what kind of person can survive? Of course, it's the person who feels that what he's been given is not enough, and he's driven to keep running and searching. And it's the kind of person who can easily pass on their genes. As generations evolved, the sense of scarcity became embedded in their genes. Even later, during the Industrial Revolution, we quickly figured out how to produce food more efficiently. Our environment quickly moved from scarcity to abundance. We're still genetically motivated to think and act in this way. Eat more food than our bodies need. To seek out more information. To buy unnecessary things. To focus on getting what we don't have instead of enjoying what we do have. In our modern world, even when we have more than enough, we rarely consider ourselves so fortunate. It's a tendency you may not even recognize, but it's so ingrained in our subconscious that it makes us more susceptible to feeling scarcity, and more susceptible to becoming addicted to things. When our obsession with scarcity reaches a certain level, a state will arise that exacerbates our addiction. This state is called narrow-mindedness, which means that our perception is limited to a single focus. We focus only on the things we think are scarce, as if nothing else exists in the world. So we worry about it and become obsessed with it. Think of a time in your life when you were so obsessed with someone or something. At that time, did you forget the state of the whole forest for the sake of this leaf? Let's look at it from a chemical point of view. What happens to our brain when we feel scarce? Actually, at that very moment, our brain secretes a substance you may not be familiar with called dopamine. You may have heard of it. Dopamine is the substance that is responsible for pleasure. It's the substance that makes us feel happy. But the author says that dopamine has another role, which is to make us pursue pleasure. For example, let's say we come home from a long day at work, have a glass of wine, and feel a sense of stress relief. And that's when the brain connects the dots between drinking and seeking pleasure. The next time we feel stressed, the brain releases dopamine to create a craving for a glass of wine. When we watch a short video and think it's funny, our dopamine tells us to keep scrolling, you'll be happier. And we're hooked. You see, Dopamine is not only responsible for pleasure. It's also responsible for our addictive response. It's been suggested that we can control the addictive response by controlling dopamine production. No, you can't. Because dopamine is multitasking. It regulates our movement. It affects our urinary system. It controls our white blood cell production, and so on. If we really try to regulate dopamine, we're going to have serious health problems. This is definitely not the way to go. To defeat addictive behavior, it's important to look at the mechanism itself. It's about seeing the patterns that drive the behavior, and then breaking them. Now, let's talk about the mechanism of addictive behavior. First, let's look at a gambling machine that has addicted many people in the United States. It illustrates the principle of addiction. This machine is a slot machine. The operation of a slot machine is very simple. Press the button and the reel will spin. A certain image appears on the screen and the player wins money. It is said that in Las Vegas, the gambling capital of the United States, slot machines are the most popular gambling toys. They can be found in every corner of the city. Gas stations, restaurants, airport terminals, and so on. But what many people don't know, until the 1970s, slot machines were one of the most unpopular forms of gambling. People preferred to play card games, investment games, and so on. And they thought slot machines were boring. The reason slot machines can make a big comeback and become popular in Las Vegas is because a man named Reed made a number of improvements to slot machines. First of all, he added sound and light effects to the machines. When you win, it makes exciting sounds and lights. And more importantly, he changed the winning mechanism of the machine. Under the old system, people would win nothing most of the time. A few times they'd get bigger rewards. Let's say we have $10 in our hand, and we bet $1 a game. The way the old machine played, you wouldn't win once. Or maybe you'd win once, for $2 at a time. Chances are you'd lose your $10 in 2 minutes and not want to play again. Reed's machine, however, increased the number of wins, decreased the amount of a single win, and made the size of each win very different. For example, after playing once or twice, you win 10 cents. If you don't win the next time, you win 50 cents the next time. Overall, the amount of wins is not even as good as the old machine. But players never get bored. The average play time is 15 minutes. And the impression of this machine is that it makes them very excited and they want to keep playing. You will find that the main difference between the old model and the new model is the incentives. Is it a big reward that comes in frequently, or a small reward that is random and intense? Obviously, a reward mechanism that keeps you hanging on and gives you a little hope is more likely to keep us acting. Someone summarized the mechanism behind addiction by studying the working mechanism of slot machines and other research results. He called this mechanism the Scarcity Cycle. It consists of 3 steps. The first step in the Scarcity Cycle is called opportunity. That means it has to be something that has the potential to change your life for the better. You know, money, food, information, status, whatever. We play slot machines because there's a chance of winning. The opportunity gives us a reason to enter the cycle. The second step of the Scarcity Cycle is called unpredictable reward. This reward is characterized by 2 things. 1, it's unpredictable. Second, it comes more frequently. Think about it. In our daily lives, the rewards we get are often predictable. We get an itch, we scratch it, it stops itching. When we're hungry, we eat a meal, and we're not hungry. We get a paycheck on a certain day of the month. Fixed, predictable rewards are natural and not addictive. But if the reward is unpredictable, we experience a thrilling sense of suspense and anxiety. That's an addictive feeling. The slot machine just mentioned. In the old model, you could predict that you would get nothing, and only win a small percentage of the time. But in the new model, You don't know if you're going to win or lose. And you don't know the size of the prize. Obviously, the new model is much more unpredictable. The third step in the scarcity loop is called rapid repetition. This means that the behavior can be performed many times, effortlessly and quickly. Product designers create silky smooth pathways for rapid repetition. It's like a slot machine where you can start the next round as soon as the prize is revealed. In this effortless, rapid repetition, our rationality is paralyzed. The rewards come faster and faster. So we're spinning like a gyroscope. When we take this model of the scarcity loop and look at our everyday behavior, we find it extremely explanatory. For example, the addictive behavior of video swiping. Step 1. We first see an opportunity to relax. Step 2. We get some funny videos, some not so funny. That's the unpredictable reward. Step 3. Rapid repetition. You can scroll to the next content with a flick of your finger. Is it repeating very fast? 3 steps added together. So we are deeply addicted to short videos. Take snacking, for example. These days, snacks are designed to be more palatable. They don't require excessive chewing. They're small in size, 1 bite at a time. It's all designed to be quick and easy to repeat. When you shop on the air, the anchors go through the products very quickly. A mix of good and bad. This arrangement is designed to lead you into an addiction with uncertain rewards and quick repetition. All right. What we just mentioned are the 3 steps of the scarcity cycle, and how it manifests in daily life. There's actually another factor that plays a big role in addiction. We can think of it as a moderating variable in this model. This factor is the concentration of the thing. The higher the concentration, the more addictive we are. For example, the more flavorful and concentrated a good meal is, the more we're tempted to eat it. The more concentrated the taste, the more concentrated the nutrients, the more we're tempted not to stop eating. The more intense the short video, filled with more unexpected twists and turns, the easier it is for us to indulge. In our modern industrial society, a lot of food is processed in ways that make it more and more concentrated. The food we used to eat is not as tasty, not as nutritious. The entertainment we used to watch wasn't as intense. We weren't as addicted. But now, with so many highly concentrated substances, it's easier for us to become hooked on them. Having understood the mechanism of the whole scarcity cycle, you will have an extra thread in your mind. When you encounter a similar situation, you can recognize it as a scarcity cycle. Of course, raising awareness is not enough. We also need to overcome and even transcend the addictive behavior. So how do we get out of the cycle of scarcity? When we realize that we're over-consuming, that we're overindulging, our first thought may be to cut back, to consciously reduce our consumption, to eat less, or even follow a very popular trend called minimalism. Does that work? I'm afraid it doesn't. In fact, minimalism is another kind of compulsion. Minimalism, like overaccumulation, is driven by fear. Overaccumulators are driven by a scarcity mentality, a need for lots of stuff to alleviate their sense of deprivation. Minimalists, on the other hand, are driven by a strong fear of chaos. They can't accept that things are out of their control. So minimalism is not the most desirable state. Nor if you use forced abstinence to get out of the cycle. The result is that the desire is temporarily suppressed. And then the next time you're tempted, you're back to it. So we have to start with the mechanism of the cycle of scarcity. We've just learned about the 3 steps of the scarcity cycle. Now let's focus on those 3 steps to break it down. Let's start with a story. Drug and alcohol addiction has always been a major social problem in the United States. There have been reports that have tracked people with drug and alcohol problems. They found that by the age of 30, half of them quit on their own. What happened? Well, What the researchers found was that by the age of 30, a lot of big changes happened in these people's lives. Like getting married. They had kids. They got their own businesses, etc. They didn't have time for hangovers. And their attention was taken away from these fleeting moments of pleasure. In other words, a series of changes in their lives deprived them of the first step in the cycle of scarcity, is access to temptation. This means that the first step in getting rid of an addiction is to cut off access to temptation. For example, if you're addicted to watching short videos, leave your phone in the living room before you go to bed. Or you could just change your environment, like living somewhere else. Develop a new hobby to divert your attention. Develop a new group of friends, etc. The second way to get out of the scarcity cycle is to turn unpredictable rewards into fixed rewards. You'll find that no matter how good something is, once it's fixed, it becomes boring. Research has found that in the United States, if the same painkiller is prescribed in a regular hospital at a fixed dose and fixed time, the patient's addiction rate will be greatly reduced. This gives us the inspiration that if we set a time window for the behavior, so that the reward can be generated in a predictable and fixed scenario, then its appeal will not be so great. For example, if we love to watch short videos, then we might as well set ourselves to watch for half an hour each at lunch and dinner to release the desire. This avoids being led by the addiction mechanism when we return home at night with insufficient willpower. The third way to break out of the cycle of scarcity is to slow down the rate of repetition. When we watch a profound movie or read a long novel, we're less likely to lose control, because it's a slower, deeper action. There aren't as many intense moments of pleasure. And when you're done, you're in a deep state of reflection. When we buy new furniture that we have to struggle to put together, we don't feel the urge to shop as much. We spend more time appreciating the fruits of our labor. These are all ways to get rid of addictions by slowing down the repetition of things. To summarize, there are 3 ways to get out of the cycle of scarcity. They correspond to the 3 steps of the scarcity cycle. The first is to cut off access to temptation. Second, change random rewards to fixed rewards. And third, slow the rate of repetition. But the author's solution goes beyond that. Because what we want is not just to get rid of the problem. We want to live more active, healthier lives. So the author's thought, since we're addicted to short, shallow things as a result of this cycle, could we use this mechanism to drive us to create more positive habits? So the author proposed a different kind of cycle based on the scarcity cycle. It's called the abundance cycle. The ultimate goal of this cycle is to fill our hearts with deep happiness. The steps of the cycle are the same as those of the scarcity cycle, but it opens in a very different way. Next, let's talk about the abundance cycle. The first step is still opportunity. But instead of getting in touch with temptation, we get in touch with the real world. When we put our feet up and interact with nature, when we interact with people in the real world, we're all increasing our chances of having a deeper experience in the real world. There's a study that was done with pigeons and they were caged. They took a group of pigeons that were caged and addicted to the food that the researchers were feeding them, and they flew them out into the wild. And when they were brought back to their cages, the pigeons were able to kick their addiction to the food. The researchers came up with a theory called the optimal stimulus model. This model states that both humans and animals need a certain amount of stimulation. Too little stimulation and they actively seek it out and become addicted. If there's enough stimulation, it's so psychologically satisfying that they don't seek out other stimuli. Pigeons get enough stimulation in the wild. Back in the cage, they're not as interested in the stimulation of food. So when we connect with the real world, if we get enough stimulation in the real world, we are naturally immune to virtual, shallow pleasures. Think of your own experience. When you go out and get in touch with nature, when you get in touch with people, Don't you feel a deeper sense of joy? Do you feel less passion for short videos, shopping, etc.? Sometimes you even forget them. The author says that we can still enjoy shopping, but we can change the way we think about shopping. He came up with a slogan called equipment, not objects. Objects are hoarded for ownership, but equipment is for higher productivity, higher purpose. We can redirect our desire to buy towards equipment. This can bring more positive meaning to our lives. This is how the abundance cycle interprets opportunity. It sees opportunity not as a temptation, but as a chance to engage with the real world and increase future productivity. Let's move on to the second step, unpredictable rewards. The way the abundance cycle deals with this is that we can actively construct rewards that motivate us to do positive things, rather than being bound by a system designed by someone else. For example, when we're exploring a new place, we don't have to rush out and look up a rating tool. Instead of giving ourselves an exhaustive guide, we can give ourselves a space to explore. The point of this space is that we can be surprised by the beauty of uncertainty. It's about increasing the unpredictability of rewards in real life. We can also be proactive and build these rewards into our workplace, our home environment. For example, if we're motivating a team, we can surprise them sometimes instead of always having a fixed reward. Or, for example, studies have shown that giving children fixed rewards is less effective than giving them uncertain rewards. The best way to motivate a child is to give them a fixed reward for a period of time, and then change that fixed reward to a variable reward. Let's go to step 3. Rapid repetition. Doing things in real life takes more effort than in the digital space, and results are slower to come. So it's not always easy to get into a cycle of rapid repetition. We can break down the big reward into smaller rewards, and actively allow ourselves to experience the joy of winning quickly in real life. Once we've learned to build cycles of abundance and experience deeper pleasures, the shallow pleasures won't appeal to you anymore. And that's all we have for you on the mechanics of addiction. We've focused on 2 cycles, the scarcity cycle and the abundance cycle. And finally, let's go back and revisit the source of the addictive mechanism, which is scarcity. Let's get a deeper understanding of scarcity. Scarcity is a bad thing, as we've just discussed. It constricts the mind, and it leads us to overdose. But the author of this book doesn't completely deny the value of scarcity. At the end of the book, he suggests that scarcity has a positive effect. We need to take advantage of it. For example, scarcity can actually stimulate creativity. In one experiment, researchers divided participants into 2 groups. The first group was given a psychological cue that resources were scarce, and the second group was given a psychological cue that resources were abundant. They then conducted 6 different creativity experiments, such as pinning a candle to the wall with thumbtacks, etc. The results showed that in all 6 tests, the participants who believed that resources were scarce came up with more creative answers. The researchers concluded that, when resources are sufficient, we tend to solve problems by buying and adding. But when resources are scarce, we tend to solve problems with the resources we have. This forces us to develop the ability to see things from multiple perspectives. I remember a teacher telling me that he gave his children very few toys, because he realized that when there are very few toys, children can find 100 ways to use them. But if there's a lot of toys, the child loses interest in developing them. Scarcity also has the effect of allowing us to explore. As we've said from the beginning, humans evolved the scarcity brain to explore new resources. It's the sense of scarcity that drives us to take risks, to push our limits, and to build the wealth we have today. So scarcity is a double-edged sword. It can lead to addiction, but it can also lead to creativity and exploration. And it's up to us to decide whether we want scarcity to be addictive, or whether we want scarcity to be progressive. It's up to us to take control of our scarcity. If we're always being manipulated, if we're caught in the cycle of scarcity without even realizing it, then we're being controlled by scarcity. If we are always actively using the creativity and power of scarcity in different situations, then scarcity is a good quality to use. In the end, the most important thing is that we are in charge of our own lives. As long as we do that, everything can be used for us. Well, that's it for this video. If you found this video useful, please like, subscribe and share it with your friends. You are also welcome to share your thoughts in the comment section. See you in the next video.